O-Z-O-Z-A-N-N-A-M spells Ozanam, Ozanam. Proud of all the campers that are in me, in me. Divil the man who says a word again me, O-Z-O-Z-A-N-N-A-M-U-C. It's a name that a shame never has been connected with. Ozanam, that's me. It sounds like a camp song, I hope, because that's exactly what it is. In 71, 72, and 73, I spent my summers working at Camp Ozanam on the rocky shores of Lake Huron. It's a free camp run by the St. Vincent de Paul Society out of the Archdiocese of Detroit. And for 2 weeks, or approximately that now, I think it's changed a little bit, but for 2 weeks, they offer kids from the city who really have no other vacation, no other opportunities, a chance to spend 2 weeks outside and enjoy the sunshine and the fresh air and the water, and to do all kinds of activities that they would never have a chance to do at home. And as I said, it's a free camp. Everything is paid for. They even give the kids money to spend at the camp store to buy crafts or goodies along the way, just to make it a good deal. And the kids are there. They're generally about 8 to 14 years old, although my experience when I was there is that there were some who were younger and some who were older, and it was an interesting experience. That's where I'm going to be next Saturday night. I'm not going to be here. They're celebrating their 100th anniversary, and so I'm sure I'm going to sing that song once more next Saturday night. You know, I look back on that because I learned so much there that really made a difference in my life. Probably the one thing that stands out right away is that I learned the importance of learning names. You know, if you have 25 kids in a cabin, you're not going to get very far in life by saying, hey, you. You have to know the name, and the sooner you know the name, the more it establishes a relationship between you and that child, and it makes life a whole lot easier. And so, in the first day, I would learn all of those names, and that's where I learned to learn names. I'd like to say I'm still good at that, but not nearly as good as I once was. You know, chemo fog. That's my excuse. And the deacon asked, how long are you going to use that? And I said, as long as I can. That I won't forget. But in any case, you know, it was an important thing, and it was, because to have the name was an important thing. The other thing that I learned is that there are ways of dealing with kids that have still, I operate with now many, many years later. And it makes a huge difference. You know, one of the things that especially stands out, and I thought about that in relationship to today's gospel. Jesus talks about how to deal with problems in small communities. You know, Matthew's gospel is written for a Palestinian Christian community. They were not big groups of people. They were smaller groups. And they were people who, you know, because they were close to one another, there were problems that arose along the way. And people got upset with each other. And how do you deal with that? Well, I think what Jesus is talking about is something I learned when I was up at camp. And one of the things that I realized very early on is that when you're dealing with a bunch of kids, especially boys, that if you call someone out, it doesn't work very well, you know? And those of you who are teachers know what I'm talking about. You know, there's a way of disciplining that works better than others. And so what I learned was for me to say, Jean-Claude, you know you're not supposed to be doing that, right? Now, most of you didn't hear that, but he did. He heard his name right away. And so, he would respond. And it worked out really well because they tended to straighten up then without my embarrassing them in front of the others. And they tended then not to be belligerent or difficult. And just kind of like, oh, all right. I learned a lot of other things along the way. In fact, while I had a lot of jobs early in my life, that's one that I think taught me the most, at least, that I've used throughout the rest of my life. But I think that's what Jesus is talking about. We have a tendency that when someone hurts us, that we go after them and we're loud and we're harsh. And you know what? That doesn't get anywhere. It gets us nowhere, as a matter of fact. It will only provoke a reaction rather than gaining any kind of positive response. To speak softly, to speak gently, that will help open up a pathway. Because again, there's a danger that happens when we have a family or close friendships, that when things are done or said that are hurtful, those hurts tend to build up. And what they do as they build up is they build a wall between people. And they make love difficult. The temptation is to ignore it. But what Jesus is saying is that, if it really bothers you, then you need to go say something. But to say it gently and quietly in hopes of winning them over. And if that doesn't work, then go with another who also recognizes that. And again, speak it gently and quietly in hopes of winning them over. Then he says, well, if that doesn't work, then refer it to the church, refer it to the community. But even then, we tend to think that Jesus is saying, well, 3 strikes and you're out. And there are those who will point to that and say that's why, the third crime puts them beyond and we just lock them up forever. I'm going to say, that's not what Jesus is saying. He says, treat them like a Gentile or a tax collector, which doesn't mean we punish them, but we just distance ourselves from them. We live a life more separate from them. It doesn't mean we treat them disrespectfully. That everyone is meant to be treated with respect. That's what Paul reminds us. Because at the heart of it, love is not the way we feel. Love is the way we act, sometimes despite how we feel. That I may be angry as can be with someone, but I need to treat them with love. I owe them that under the law of God. That is the command. That's the command we celebrate here. Jesus talked about 2 great commandments, but he didn't give us those. Those come from Deuteronomy 6 and from Leviticus 19. To love God with everything and to love our neighbor as ourselves. The commandment that he gave us is very simple. To love one another as I have loved you. And as simple as that is so hard, especially in our closer relationships, where problems, hurts can build up, and distances can grow. And instead of loving, we find ourselves treating one another as tax collectors or as Gentiles. No, in the end, my sisters and brothers, you and I are called to love in a way that brings us closer together. And if there's a problem, we need to talk about it with one another in a way that will help us grow closer, not drive us away. Because in the end, isn't that what God is all about? God is the great love, but that's why we exist. God made us because he loved us. He made us so that we could be the recipients of that love. He made us because in the end, God needed someone to love Because love is not real unless it's given away. And especially those who are closest to us need to have that love. And so Jesus says we need to reach out in love to one another. And hopefully, prayerfully, we can mend relationships in a way that will bring us closer together. For in the end, my brothers and sisters, we won't be judged by how much we have done that is wrong. We will be judged by how much we have loved. And that's what the Lord urges us to do again today. It's something I learned long ago at camp. And I'm still trying to put that into the practice of my life. It's not easy. You know, it's easier just to be told, don't do this or don't do that. But that isn't what Jesus taught us. It isn't what Jesus showed us. It isn't the way he lived. He lived love. And he calls us to do the same. In our families, among our friends, in our communities, to live love in a way that makes it real. St. Paul reminds us that we owe that to one another.